welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and tie master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And Anne-Marie, I didn't actually tell you before we got started, but you know a little bit about this, but I wanted to just kind of put out a little bit of an announcement to people that I've been doing now since last Wednesday's show. And I'm going to be doing it for the next few shows. As you know, but listeners found out for the first time last Wednesday, we're in the process of starting a second podcast that goes along with LOA Today. The second one's going to be called Money, and it's going to be focused, funnily enough, on money. So that one's going to be coming pretty soon.
That's what it says on the tin.
Yeah, we're kind of straightforward about that. I'm still kind of blown away by the fact that I looked up all the different podcast names that have the name Money on it. None of them are just called Money.
Really?
That just never got picked up. So we're grabbing it. We're just going to call it Money and keep it real simple that way. But I mean, that's just kind of odd, you know. You think that somebody would have done that? But
file the trademark. It's to the point.
It makes it really clear what you're going to talk about. This is not a difficult thing to figure.
That's right.
But today we're going to do something that we haven't done in a while. We haven't talked about health issues in quite some time.
No.
We love doing that because there's a lot of cool stuff that goes on there, but we haven't really done that. So this is a good show to kind of, take us back to that particular world, because really that's the most important world. If you don't have your health, you forget the rest of it. I mean, there's just no point. If you're not healthy, the rest of your life is just not even hardly worth talking about at times. So
exactly,
pretty important. Yeah. And we're going to be doing it today with Dr. Bilal Ahmed, who is a cardiologist who has somewhat different views about how health is supposed to work that don't necessarily mesh all the time with the mainstream. That puts smiles on our faces because we love anything that says mainstream. You don't have all the answers. This is a good thing. We're going to learn more about that in just a moment. So Dr. Ahmed, Bilal, welcome to the program. How's it going down there in Atlanta, Georgia?
It is hotter than I would like to admit. Otherwise, happy as can be. I'm post call and just happy not to be in the hospital.
It's a good time to be indoors with the AC on. I get it. Yeah,
exactly.
I take it it's warm where you guys are then.
It is 100 degrees outside.
Ooh.
So,
that's a wee bit warm.
I got my car at 7 a.m. and it was already in the 90s, and I was like, all right, here we go.
Wow.
And how high is the humidity? I'm kind of curious.
Great question. It feels like 100% humidity, but I could tell you real quick.
Well, that gives you the clue right there. When you have that high heat and that level of humidity, this is called sweltering. This is not an enjoyable thing.
51%. I think that's on the higher end.
That's actually lower than I would have thought. So hey, that's not so bad.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking closer to maybe 60, 70,
Yeah, right. This time of day, that's actually really good.
Yeah.
But anyway, give us a little bit about you. We need a bit of a potted 2-minute autobiography. So tell us not only how you became a cardiologist, but how you also became somebody who dared to challenge the mainstream. It's like being Darth Vader. I mean,
Vader or Palpatine? Take
either one. Take your pick.
So pretty standard story when it comes to why I went in medicine. Usually somebody's been affected by it. My paternal grandfather had a congenitally malformed aortic valve, one of the 4 valves in the heart, and got surgery for it. It lasted him about 10 years, but he passed before this procedure called TAVR, or transcatheter aortic valve replacement, which I now have the pleasure to do and kind of embarked upon in his memory. Okay. So I was interested in heart health because he was a mentor of mine, and I looked up to him from when I was yay high to when he passed, and he always wanted one of his grandchildren to become a cardiologist. It was just something that was stuck in his head, and so I became that grandchild and did internal medicine training, cardiology training, and then interventional cardiology, which is opening up arteries during heart attacks, and then structural cardiology, which is valve repairs or replacement, depending on the indication. And then between undergrad and medical school, I went to business school for an entirely different reason. Obama was being elected, and there was a lot of talk about, healthcare is going to change. And so I was like, I'm going to go to business school and learn the jargon. So I'll at least be prepared when I go into private practice. I'll know what's going on. Ended up starting a startup on accident, kind of.
Okay.
Hand was forced. We can talk a little bit about it later, but essentially did some clinical research, and given the research environment in the United States currently, or lack thereof, rather.
You noticed.
Yeah, right. I hear about it every now and then, but it's it almost forced my hand to go the enterprise route, and here I am. So I founded a company called Lila Health.
And tell us a little bit about Lila too, just so we can have that kind of as part of the background.
Absolutely. So the gut microbiome people may have heard of. Most people have heard of it in kind of a marketing environment, which is unfortunate, being someone who also markets it. But it's got a lot of hard science behind it. Some really cool things that I'll kind of point out. So if you've got two people who have the same type of cancer with the same type of mutation, they qualify for biologic therapy. It's like targeted chemotherapy to that mutation. And if you take identical people and you give them that biologic therapy, a person with an unhealthy gut microbiome, which we can talk about later if we have time, versus someone who has a healthy one, the unhealthy gut microbiome individual will have a poorer response to biologic therapy. So the cancer will not regress as much, or they may not have a response at all relative to somebody who's healthy. And it's got significant interplay with cardiac disease, ranging from heart failure to cholesterol management to diabetes. So it really kind of touches on multiple aspects of health and has a fascinating origin story that I'm happy to wax poetic about if we have time.
Well, you may be surprised to learn we're going to touch on the microbiome sooner rather than later, because that's part of where you like to diverge. And it's the divergent part that actually is interesting, right?
Yeah. I would agree.
You're not your typical mainstream do it by the book cardiologist. You diverged, which is always a dangerous thing, particularly here in the U.S. to do if you are in the medical field, because the moment you diverge, everybody's going to come down on you within the field, and then you actually have to deal with the people outside too. So you get it from both sides. I mean, that's kind of the way the thing is structured, and add in the fact that the whole thing is pharmacology driven. I mean, on the one hand, there are people like me who say, well, come on, docs, you got to speak up. And on the other hand, it's kind of hard to speak up. You're pulled in a couple different directions there. Talk about what that's like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I actually don't think of it as divergent. I think of it as evolutionary. For the last 10 to 20 years, there's been a shift in the way that we think about heart disease. And this is all very mainstream. It used to be just that cholesterol is high. We got to target the bad cholesterol, bring it down as low as you can go. And that's going to prevent a heart attack, or if you've had a heart attack, prevent a second event. What we've come to find out is that really inflammation, which is a very nebulous term and can mean a lot of things, but in general, inflammation drives the actual plaque progression. So the LDL particle itself needs to be activated, for lack of a better word, or oxidized, if you want to use the biochemical term, for it to kind of irritate the inner lining of the blood vessels that feed the heart muscle. And that causes an immune response. And your own immune cells, called macrophages, gobble up that oxidized LDL, become foam cells, aggregate in the walls, make plaque. And that plaque, if it becomes 100%, turns into a heart attack. And so this is an extension of the inflammatory hypothesis in coronary disease, which is very mainstream. It's just a nascent field, or a nascent target rather, which is the gut microbiome, something that we really kind of came to know more about starting back in about 2013.
And inflammation as a concept, it's definitely reached the mainstream audience. I don't mean just the medical mainstream. I mean just the human audience. People are now hearing about inflammation, and we've been hearing about inflammation for a lot of things, not just heart-related stuff, for a whole bunch of stuff. And we've been hearing about it now for 10, 15 years, something like that. Now, I'm sure it's been central to your guys' work a lot longer than that, but that's how long it's really been in the public eye. So it kind of points to something really going on.
No, it is. I think it the driver of most chronic diseases in the industrialized world, to be frank.
Yeah, it makes sense. Now, one thing we like to focus on, or I won't even put in Emery's seat, I will say I like to focus on a lot when we talk about anything health related is, yeah, it's great whenever mainstream medicine is trying to resolve big issues that have come along. But how do they get started in the first place? That's the part that often gets kind of pushed aside a little bit. And there are a number of reasons for it. I mean, I had actually had one, I think it was a doctor who mentioned here on the program, we'd love to deal with that, but the patients don't want to do that. They want a pill to fix it. They don't want to actually have to make changes in their lifestyle. They don't want to actually have to make changes in, what they're going to do with their health or what they're eating or ingesting or drinking or anything else like that. And the thought that goes through my mind is, well, why the hell not? Right. That's why I keep bringing it up. Like, this is important stuff. You don't actually have to get the doctor to fix your heart or your stomach or your cancerous liver or whatever it is if you take early steps. So I want to talk about that bit.
Yeah, 100%. That is well within kind of my spiel, both as a clinician and as an entrepreneur. There is no silver bullet for health. There is no magic fix-it pill. What I offer is certainly very much couched in you have to do some effort on your own part. You inhabit this body from the time you open your eyes for the first time to the time you close it for the final time. And really the foundation is what it has always been, which is healthy eating and activity. And healthy eating just looks like, latest data says a pesco Mediterranean diet is the most heart healthy diet. Pesco is just fish, Mediterranean's extra virgin olive oil, leafy greens, nuts, about 30 grams a day, walnuts, almonds, take your pick, and then legumes. And that's really the formula diet wise. Try to avoid red meat. Don't, take all the fun out of life, but instead of three cheeseburgers a day, maybe limit it to, one a week or two a week. That's usually enough. And then, some sort of physical activity. And I'm not saying go out there and kill yourself and immediately go to 10,000 steps a day. It's really what you can sustain over life. Because if you can't sustain it, it's not going to have a long-standing impact. And it's unfortunate because, we live to an average of 78 years in the United States, but the last 10 to 15 years on average for the average person is spent dealing with some sort of chronic illness. And statistically, it's going to be heart disease or cancer. And if you can, like you said, do the heavy lifting early, then you may not gain too much in terms of, lifespan, but your quality of life could be markedly better. And you could be, symptom free and walking around and doing what you want to do right until the very end, which I think is just as worthwhile.
And I'm 69, so I'm theoretically near the end of that span you listed. Now, I also have perhaps a genetic advantage that other people don't have. I have a great grandmother on my mother's side who lived to 108. My uncle on my father's side also lived to 108. I got a lot of longevity going on. So that I certainly, but at the same time, if I don't actually treat my body well, none of that matters. I mean, I can still undermine the whole thing. So
100%.
And the flip side of it is, even if you got all that stuff not on your side, you can still take control of your life. I mean, there is a thing called epigenetics. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on that, you don't have to be defined by your genetic code. So really, it doesn't matter who you are, where you are in your journey, you can still turn things around. And absolutely. I guess the reason I'm mentioning all this is it's great that there's medical science to deal with, the aftershock, if you will, of what happens when we really don't take care of ourselves. But wouldn't it be great if we just took care of ourselves? I mean, I was out on a hike today. I went out with a group of people around my age. There were two of us, myself and a woman, who were basically outpacing everybody else by a lot. And the others weren't in bad shape for our age range. We were definitely the younger ones of the group in terms of the way our bodies were holding up, and we were just cruising right along and so forth. But this group was actually, for the age range as a whole, this actually was a better group than typical people our age. Most people our age, they're sedentary, they're stuck on their couches, they a lot of them are hobbling around, and all I can think is, what are you doing? That thought just goes through my head over and over again. What are you doing? Or more precisely, what aren't you doing?
Yeah.
Let's not hammer on this stuff.
I mean, I think the best way to kind of encapsulate it in terms of what's going on in popular culture and kind of life outside is these pop-up clinics, these shadow doctors who are prescribing GLP-1 agonists, you know, Ozempic for you, Ozempic for you. It's like the Oprah Winfrey, you get a car, you get a car. And it's like, really, you know, it's great. GLP-1 agonists have benefits. They reduce cardiac risk, but you wouldn't need them if you did the heavy lifting again. You know, there's
And mentioned heavy lifting. I mean, I have another co-host who is literally a heavy lifter. He goes to the gym and lifts 500 pounds. He's that kind of a guy. He's been doing it for
gotcha.
But you don't even have to do that.
No,
I mean, I'm not a lifter. I don't go to the gym, but I stay active. I go out. I do things. I walk. I'm a dancer. I have a very. I don't think I lift more than 20 pounds at a time, but I do a lot of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much that's out there in terms of kind of goals or the ideals. It's almost like this whole social media phenomenon. You know, people go online and they see nothing but just, you know, beautiful figures and beautiful faces, and it's like, oh, this is the ideal. This is normal. And so you'll hear like this magic number, 10,000 steps a day. Turns out that's, I don't know if I can say this on here, but that's completely.
You can. It's
okay,
perfectly loud.
There's this great study in the Journal of American College of Cardiology about 3 years ago that actually stratified by kind of intervals of 2,000 steps a day, and found that, you know, as common sense would kind of dictate, if you're sedentary and you go up to 2,000 steps a day, you get incremental benefit. Your risk of heart disease related death goes down by 8.4%. If you're starting at 2,000 and you go to 4,000, you get a slightly less, you know, of a benefit in terms of magnitude, but it's still around 7%, and then so on and so forth. And so, you know, if you can get close to 8,000, which is closer to the magic number in terms of maximizing your benefit, you know, basically point being, it doesn't take as much as you think it does. Yet we hear, you know, you gotta have your smartwatch on, you have to track your steps, you have to hit 10,000, and sometimes that's almost a mental barrier, if you will.
I think it definitely is a mental barrier. I mean, I know I have an app on my phone that tracks that for me. You know when the last time was that I actually looked at it? I'm thinking maybe 9 months ago. I mean, I don't pay any attention to it.
Mine's dead and sitting outside the frame, so it's same here.
I mean, I go out and do this stuff. I just don't worry about, was it 3,500 today? I don't know. Who cares? You go be active. That's the thing. And
you take the stairs when you can. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Oh, see, I'm a step watcher. I'm a step watcher, and I love it. It motivates me to keep moving.
So it does work for you.
It works for me, but then I use it to monitor my sleep and how my body's reacting to things and breath work and things like that. I use it for everything. I just think it's amazing. But I set my goal quite low, so then I know I'm going to hit that goal, and then anything else I feel like I've just done extra, and I feel really proud of myself.
That's the smart way to do it, because otherwise it's just going to shame you. When I was using it, I just felt shamed every day because I wasn't hitting the goal, the probably unrealistic goal I had hit.
Yeah, well, that's just it. You got to be willing to think of it. This is the way I look at it anyway. You have to be willing to think of it in terms of, is it better? Not is it perfect or is it ideal? Is it better?
Yeah.
Because better, we can always get better. You know, we can't always get perfect. We can never get perfect. And nobody can define, no one's been able to tell me in 69 years what perfect even is. But we can do better every single day. There's always a way to do something better.
Sure.
That's easy. That's a goal that's in reach.
100%. I can get behind that.
Now, the other thing, and this is a big piece of it, and I think I really do want you to weigh in on this. I'll pick on my ex-wife, who I still have contact with. She actually worked for me in a company that she owned that I bought from her. Long story. But the point is that we still have contact. And even when we were married, for her, doing any kind of sustained regular activity was a chore because she just couldn't bring herself to do it. And to this day, she still has trouble with it. And she's experiencing the issues with it now. She's actually 3 years older than I am, and it's showing up. I mean, there are times when she's hobbling along, and she knows it, but she still has trouble getting herself to make the changes, to even do the minimal things. You know, go out and take like a 5-minute walk, anything to shift the gears. So there is a mental piece to this, and probably also emotional, perhaps even spiritual, that really can hold people back in a big way. Now, I imagine you don't get a lot of that as being a cardiologist, but in the time that you're dealing with patients who are dealing with issues that come about because of lack of exercise, lack of proper diet, and so forth, I imagine it comes up at some point. Do you get any sense about what it is that's making it so difficult for people to make these shifts? What is it about the mental picture or anything like that? Because I've never been able to kind of zero in on that.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. My answer is perhaps going to be from a different lens, or it's going to be dependent on the patients that I see. So in the area that I practice, there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of like, I'm working 2 jobs, I'm working 3 jobs to make ends meet. And so I think for my particular patient population, it's like, I've got kids, I'm working, 2 shifts, maybe 3 shifts. I'm just tired. And that's understandable and excusable to a degree.
Sure.
Yeah, most people work desk jobs these days, so there's not a lot of work opportunity unless you're doing manual labor to get activity in. But I absolutely have encountered that kind of, I hate to say willpower because that makes it sound kind of negative, but for lack of a better term, and I don't know, antipathy to doing any kind of activity. And certainly it's multifactorial. I agree with you, ranging all the way to maybe spiritual aspect as well. But sometimes it's also kind of the fear of the unknown, right? Like for somebody who's never been an active person, there's this, they've aggrandized this idea of physical activity that, oh, I'm going to sweat, I'm going to feel terrible, like it's going to be deleterious to me in the short term, and they can't get past that mindset. When really, if you just do it once, it's like, oh, I'm alive, things are okay, I'm a little bit sweaty, I don't feel any better, any worse, but like maybe I'll try it again tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like it's not a horrific, apocalyptic scenario. And from my own life, I was 60 pounds heavier, for a long time. And wow. I personally experienced that. What really tipped me over was, I'm going to be a cardiologist. I cannot look anyone in the eyes and say, hey, lose weight if I am overweight.
I give you credit for that, by the way, because I've encountered many doctors who gave me advice that I could tell they weren't following, and they did so without batting an eye. So I give you credit for being willing to say, you know what, I can't do that.
You gotta walk the walk. I mean, I used to smoke also, packing a half a day for 10 years. And then my wife said, please stop. And I mean, it required more than that, but sure. You can't do one thing and tell people to do something else. It's just, it doesn't work that way.
You can. I mean, I've always had blood pressure. I had an episode where my blood pressure was spiked a bit. It wasn't high by your standards, but it spiked to like 150 over 90 or something like that, and it was really unusual for me.
That's high.
It's high, yeah. But I mean, my norm was like in the range of like 120 over 80, 110 over 70. It was like that. Okay. So I was like, hey, there's something going on here. So I go to the emergency room, and of course, because I'm talking about something heart related, I'm one of the first ones in there. So they triage me right in there, and then they start quizzing me about it. And they give me a reaction that basically says, why are you wasting our time? And the cardiologist who talked to me said, I'm just standing here right here. My blood pressure is probably in that range. And, that's just part of what it is to be older. And all I could think of was, why am I taking advice about blood pressure from a guy who can't control his own blood pressure?
Yeah, I was about to say that doesn't sound like the script that I've got.
I like, really?
Well, that's a whole other can of worms that I can open if you want me to.
You can see why this is a deal for me, though. I'm thinking, what on earth is going on here?
Yeah, no, I hear you. So I mean, I can empathize even, with people, because it sucked. It sucked a little bit to, be the more heavyset guy at the gym, and I'm like, oh, are people looking at me and all this kind of stuff, and 2-3 days go by, and it's like, oh, this is fine. Everything's fine. And then, 6-8 months later, I'm a lot slimmer and I feel great about myself. And, it's a short period of time in the grand scheme of things. So I can understand what your ex-wife may be going through.
Yeah, sure. And I understand too. I lived with her for 23 years. I mean, I got to experience indirectly, but living vicariously through her, I got to experience it firsthand. I got to see it. I got to see how it's quite debilitating, actually, to have that kind of a mindset going on. And it's not like she didn't try to do anything to fix it, because she did, and she went through her own medical thing. She went through Graves' disease at one point. Was told that she was going to be on medication for the rest of her life, probably have to have her thyroid burned out, all this other kind of stuff, and managed to beat all of that against the odds, despite the fact that the endocrinologist said, no, there's no way you're going to ever beat it. And then a year later, he took her off it because he had to. And that's what the readings were telling him. So, and literally she did that by going through a process of calming her mind, watching happy videos to make herself feel good, get herself into a good frame of mind, and lo and behold, her body responded. Who knew?
Yeah.
So it goes to show that she knows how to try. She knows how to make changes, and yet she was unable, to this day, still unable to make this other kind of change. It shows how much of a challenge it is. It also, to me, shows just how much it needs to be addressed. I mean,
absolutely.
I know that you don't have any data you could point to on this, but I would kind of like to ask you offhand, if you could just kind of estimate if the patients that you saw who you were treating for various kind of heart conditions, if they all had changed their behavior, how many of them would you actually still be seeing, do you think? Like what percentage?
Yes, I can give you some numbers at least. I mean, high blood pressure constitutes 47% of the risk of blockage in the arteries of the heart. And so, you take all the high blood pressure patients that I have who also have coronary artery disease. If they control their blood pressure, 47% of them I would not be seeing for coronary artery disease, to use an example. So I mean, it's a sizable chunk. I think we're both getting at. A lot of this is modifiable. I mean, it's very much a consequence of our environment. It's easy when you look around and more than a third of the population is obese. It's like, okay, this is normalized. It is okay to be this way. And in fact, birds of a feather flock together for a reason. There are adages for a reason. And it's become ingrained in society that we're seeing one thing on the silver screen and we're seeing one thing on the dull gray screen that is reality. And it doesn't, it's cognitive dissonance, but yeah, you could prevent a lot, and it's a whole lot better to be proactive than reactive, which is the way that our system currently is, unfortunately.
Now one of the claims, and I have to be, I've even made it myself, but one of the claims against medicine that often gets made is, well, the doctors don't really want to promote that because then they wouldn't be making as much money. They wouldn't have as much clients. I'd like you to have the opportunity to answer that, because I don't think that's necessarily true.
I would say that's absolutely not the case. So to give you an example, an average clinic day, which is a half day for me, 8:30 to 11:30. I'll have anywhere between 26 and 29 patients. That's about 5, maybe 10 patients or 10 minutes with a patient. That's about enough time to say hello and goodbye. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of, counseling that can go on or real education that can happen. It's really truly reacting to what they're telling you or what the lab, work or diagnostics are telling you. If I could see 10 less patients in a half day, my life would be a lot easier. You know what I mean?
Wow, there's a great point. I like that.
Interesting.
It's stressful from an obligation or moral standpoint that you're responsible for 29 patients over the course of less than a half day, and you wonder, did I do right by each one of them? So yeah, I disagree with that. Living it, I disagree with it wholeheartedly.
That's wonderful to hear, and I want to hear more of that. That's why I brought it out. But I want to hear more of that from doctors, because I mean, people put, not to put too fine a point on it, people put doctors on pedestals. I mean, you guys you're the experts, right? Well, if we're going to make certain people the experts, how about the experts saying what needs to be said? That to me, that's the most important part of all.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a very dinky TikTok channel where I make health education videos, mostly heart related, because it's the best organ. No bias at all, but I've connected with a bunch of doctors as a result, because they'll see my videos and then they'll message me and A lot of the stuff that I talk about has to do with kind of this burnout path, or this kind of doom and gloom way that healthcare is set up, both for patients and providers. And across the board, I haven't met a single physician who says, man, don't take away that 29th patient from me. It's always, please, what can we do to lessen the load? Because it's not good for anyone. I mean, it's certainly not good for us. If I got 2 hours of sleep over, this past call weekend from 7 a.m. on Friday to 7 a.m. today, that's not healthy, or doesn't feel good. And so lessening the burden would also help me sleep, and would be better for the populace. I mean, we would be more productive as a society. Imagine, if we're not dealing with chronic illnesses. But unfortunately, that's the way that things have progressed, and it's going to get worse. There was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2017 projecting obesity rates to 2030. It's been mitigated somewhat by Ozempic and the other GLP-1s because they've done some of the heavy lifting. But obesity rates over 50% projected, still at that mark, last I checked from last year's data. But on a state level, you're looking at states like Georgia, where I am, that gets close to 60%. Can you imagine? 60% of the population.
That's wild.
It's a setup for some dystopian nightmare.
And there's plenty of blame to go around. People love to blame. I mean, that's just part of who we are as human beings. We love to blame. It's so much, I got to point finger of blame at somebody because I don't want to take the responsibility.
Of course.
But that's too uncomfortable to actually have to say, I'm the one who's playing the role here. But when we look at all the different things that get blamed, I keep thinking to myself over and over again, wouldn't it be nice if we actually had somebody say on a regular basis, let's stop the blaming. Let's just start changing the way we do things.
Well, that is above my pay grade. If you have access to the entirety of Congress, then, do I have a deal for you? I think a lot of it is health policy. You look at things like, it's not as much of an epidemic as it used to be, but smoking, for decades, it was an epidemic. Insurance companies don't pay for nicotine replacement therapy. Kind of a no-brainer, right? Blood pressure cuffs. A lot of insurance companies will not reimburse for a blood pressure cuff. So you can't even screen for your own blood pressure at home. You're relying on, a one data point out of 365 days at your primary care doctor's office. And, in the background, you may have blood pressures through the roof, which has happened to multiple patients and also family members of mine. I'll tell you a story. Not my aunt, but my wife's aunt. She was having some heart issues about a year ago. And I told her something that I think rubbed her the wrong way, and came out the wrong way too. But she was like, what do you think's wrong with me? And I said, I can tell from the doorway that you've got sleep apnea and that you've got high blood pressure and diabetes. Probably a better way to say that. It came out that way. She asked, right? Exactly. That's what I tell myself so I can sleep at night. But her response was, whenever I go to my primary doctor once a year, my blood pressure is normal. And I was like, okay, let's prove it. 24-hour blood pressure cuff. Her average blood pressure, that top number, was in the 200s. She's now on 3 blood pressure medications. She does indeed have sleep apnea, and she does indeed have diabetes. I was sad to be right, but I was also right. So, you know what I mean? It's one of those things that if blame really has to go around, I'm sure that, clinicians should shoulder some of that blame, but there's a lot of blame higher up with fatter paychecks that does not get, it gets talked about.
I think the blame is harmful, to be honest. I think the blame gets in the way, because what it really does is it enables us to say, because there's so much blaming going on, I can be super sensitive, so I don't have to actually deal with any of this, because I can just say, well, I'm being blamed, and therefore it's the blame's problem. Blame actually becomes the thing to blame.
Fair, I think, on an individual level, but I think if you're talking about Martin Shkreli and he's taking antihelminthic drugs that are specifically for people with HIV, and he's marking them up by 900%, I think he should get the blame. And he also is a multi-hundred millionaire, so I think his ego will live.
I hear your point. Yeah.
Yeah. From that perspective, there should be some blame that goes on, but for
I
the
don't
average
think there's
person,
a lack of blame. Blame doesn't seem to be going away. I don't think we have a real issue with that part.
that's true. That's true. Yeah. Public shaming is alive and well. Yeah.
It's alive and well, yes. It almost has better health than the human population has.
I'd agree with that. I would agree with that.
Oh my goodness, it's crazy. Anyway, let's get back to your immediate field, because in your field you are now tying into the microbiome as a significant contributor to heart-related issues, and that is, I'll say, quasi-mainstream. There is more mainstream to that than there used to be, say, 20 years ago. It's still pushing the boundaries a little bit. Are there other ways that you push the boundaries besides that?
I think in my interaction with patients, I'm myself with patients, which physicians often are not. So, I will be dropping F-bombs. I will, say whatever I want to say. And, obviously not in a derogatory manner. I'm not, calling people names, but I think there's a certain level of, how do I say it? What's the best way to say it? Bridging that distance. It's kind of like what you said earlier, that physicians are put on this pedestal, when really I just want you to call me by my first name, because I'm calling you by your first name. I want to use the same kind of language that I would use with my friends, with you. And the whole point of it is that you understand me and I understand you, so that we can achieve the common goal, which is get you better, fix what's going on, and hopefully prevent what's going on or what may happen in the future. And that often helps. And this is not exactly pushing the boundaries, or it's not as sexy of a boundary pusher. But there's this tendency in medicine, unfortunately, to be glued to the screen when the patient is sitting next to you. So I don't take any computers in with me. I've got a little dictation device that is on, and it's my brain dump, and I'll use it for dictation when I go into my office. But I take in a little whiteboard. It's a little dinky whiteboard, looks kind of nerdy, but I'll draw out whatever's going on, whether it's a blood vessel, or kind of you have three options. Here's a flow chart. But I find that that's a lot more effective and efficient communication, especially when you're pressed for time. You have 10 minutes, and people feel heard, even though I didn't spend any more time with them than an equivalent provider. It seems to work, at least in my personal experience.
Well, sure. I mean, if you're feeling like you're being heard, you feel like you're being treated.
Yeah. That's, I would say, the majority of it is like, okay, fine. Somebody's listening to me, and not just, saying, okay, you're going to get X test, Y test, Z test. I'm still going to order those tests, but at least you'll know why,
That drives me crazy. I'm not going to lie. When they order tests, they don't tell you what they're for. They don't tell you what the results are. You never hear from it again. And you're like, what was that about?
And it just blows my mind. It's like, you want ownership, right? Like there's such a lack of health literacy from K through 12. We don't learn anything about health. Is there some gym coach who knows about this much more about health than you do as a teenager, who's teaching you what's going on in your body? Most of it is related to contraceptive use or abstinence altogether, and it's not really like bodily health, if you will. And so there's this kind of vacuum of health literacy. You're trying to get people up to speed. Why not explain in simple terms, like, this is why you're getting those tests. This is what we're going to do with those tests. And this is, it makes it easier to get your blood drawn,
Exactly. Well, this is what's going on in your body, and this is why I want to have a look and see if this is happening or if that's happening, and just to have that information.
Yeah.
But isn't it also the fact that the way you can answer this very directly in a way that I can't possibly, but just from what I've heard, when people go through medical school, the amount of actual training they get on health is pretty minimal. Most of it is about disease. But in terms of, here's what you mentioned earlier, and by the way, I like what you said about what an ideal diet is. I said, yeah, okay, that's the first time I've heard that from a doctor. Good to hear. But most doctors, as I understand it, they don't actually give you a lot of training on that kind of thing when you go through medical school. That's not really the priority.
No, there's no nutrition class. I didn't take a single nutrition class.
What?
And
I mean, that blows my mind.
exercise
incredible.
physiology, you know, little bits and pieces here, but yeah.
And yet they call it healthcare. Like, what?
Right. Yeah, the system is engineered in a way to be reactive and not proactive. It's not as if there aren't physicians who are doing good work out there. I mean, this came from, you know, a trial, a cardiology trial called the Predimed trial. And so it's a bunch of cardiologists who knew about nutrition, who decided to test nutrition, and found a signal of success, found that there's a 30%, you know, relative risk reduction in, you know, heart disease-related death, heart attack, stroke. To put it in another way, if 100 people follow the diet, one person avoids a stroke, heart attack, or heart disease-related death. But you're right. We don't get educated on it. It's really after the fact if you go seeking it out. It's in the guidelines, but we're just kind of like, yeah, whatever, you know.
And to me, that's mind-boggling, particularly in an age where there's so much concern about healthcare and healthcare spending and healthcare costs. Like, well, where do you think the cost comes from?
Right.
The thought goes through my mind. Where do you think it comes from?
It quacks like a duck, and it sounds like a duck. It's probably a duck. No, absolutely. I'm with you. It's unfortunate, but you know, again, that one's above my pay grade. But
I think I'd argue that it's actually part of your pay grade, not just you personally.
You think so? Overhauling the medical education?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a reason why you guys are put on the pedestal. You're on the pedestal. That's a platform. That's a platform for talking. That's what the pedestal. That's the value of the pedestal. If there's going to be any value to the pedestal, that's it.
Hey, well, I'm on TikTok making videos, so
there you go.
I'm doing my part.
yeah, but that's what I want to see more of. I want to see not necessarily TikTok, but I want to see doctors taking on the role and saying, you know what? Okay, I have an audience listening to me. It may be an audience of 50, but I have an audience listening to me, and I'm an authority figure. Well, how about I take that and say, hey, why don't we just improve our exercise? Why don't we improve our diet? Why don't we start doing these things that are actually going to make it so that you don't have to see me as often? That, as a regular message, that would be so refreshing.
You know what I find fascinating is so I will, you know, give a mix of kind of topics. So I'll talk about, this is one of my favorites, is kind of preventative medicine, and then also, you know, what medications, or when you should take medications and when they're appropriate and what they do. In both scenarios, I get these weird comments. So, you know, for that same Mediterranean diet one, I got this comment. I opened TikTok today, and it was just copied and pasted in like 3 paragraphs, lies. And I was like, I don't know what that means or what to make of that, but okay, sure.
They learned how to copy and paste. That's what it means.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations. Welcome to 1990. But you know, on the other videos about statins, it's the same thing. You know, it's lies. You can't win, but yeah. There is an audience out there that wants to hear this stuff, but there's always the naysayers who will, you know, be contrarian for the sake of being contrarian.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anybody I'm an entrepreneur, so I know this too, but anyone who's ever done anything entrepreneurial, anything that deals regularly with the public, learns pretty quickly you will never satisfy everybody. There's just no way to do it. It is not a possibility. It's not even on the table. No. So don't look for it because you're just going to be disappointed.
Buckle up. It's going to continue forever.
That's just the way it is. But wouldn't it be great, though, for the other 80%? That's what I can keep thinking about. We have this tendency to cater to the guy who publishes lies, because he's making a lot of noise. Mm-hmm. But he's really not representative of the entire population at all.
No. People are reasonable. They're very reasonable, and
they generally are.
Give them credit for it. Yeah, I agree with you.
So, you know, you want to publish lies? Have fun. See you later.
My last TikTok account got banned for a few choice messages for those types of people, but we will get into that at some other time off camera.
Yeah, there's something really weird about your account being banned because of their messages. I won't even touch that one.
Well, it was more the response, but yeah, again, that's for another time.
Even so, all right. I mean, actually, that makes more sense.
Yeah, right.
It really does. It makes more sense. Oh my goodness.
Not for
That's
no
great.
fools, right?
Yeah. Or is no fool like an old fool? I'm not sure which. So let's talk a little bit about the business, because we haven't really talked about that very much. But talk about how Lila got started and what, you're the co-founder of it, so you have some expertise on that one. So tell us about it.
I'd say I would hope so. Serendipity, to be quite frank. I did not anticipate this would go the enterprise route. It actually started as prospective research when I was still in training in 2017 up in Providence at Brown with two colleagues of mine. Essentially what we were doing was, the gut microbiome field was even more nascent than it is now, if that's an appropriate term to use. But we were taking patients who were getting a heart catheterization to take a look at the arteries of the heart. Two groups: people who had blockages, needed a stent to pop open the blockage; people with no blockage or no disease. And then we'd get a rectal swab to do what's called 16S sequencing, or kind of ribosomal sequencing, to see what types of bacteria and what diversity of bacteria grew, as well as something called metabolomics, which is basically what chemicals do they make and what interactions do they possibly have with different disease entities. And so we had a goal of 50 patients enrolled prospectively. 3 patients shy of that, a once in a lifetime pandemic hit, and we got defunded. Appropriately so. COVID-19 took precedence, but it stuck with me. One of those things that kind of keeps you up at night, a passion project. In fact, during cardiology training, it was for general cardiology, it's 3 years. And every year you'd go up in front of the division of cardiology and give an hour-long talk on something that you were passionate about. And so I had the same theme all 3 years: inflammatory hypothesis of heart disease.
Oh, here comes Bilal again. Same
one, 2, and 3. Yeah, exactly. And then the third one was, or my final year was, about the gut microbiome. That what's the next frontier that we haven't tapped yet? To put a little color to it, there's this concept of residual risk in cardiology, and all that means is, of all the medical specialties, cardiology has the most research behind it. We have the best tools in terms of prediction, because more people die from it than any other disease. But there's this massive gap between who we predict and how many people we predict will have heart disease, and who and how many people actually develop it. And that gap is that residual risk. And, by and large, very much in the mainstream, that residual risk lies somewhere in the inflammatory pathway. Where in the inflammatory pathway, we haven't quite pinned it down, but my humble opinion is that it lies in the gut microbiome. Reason is multifold, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. We are outnumbered by the bacteria that live alongside us, often symbiotically, sometimes parasitically, literally trillions of them. If you look at the DNA contribution, the bacteria that live alongside us contribute 150 times the DNA that our own cells do. And so it's kind of a wild concept that we didn't look earlier to this, kind of realm for answers, because there's so many variables involved that it would be insane to think that there's no impact on disease. So, for example, our guts cannot digest fiber. We rely on the bacteria that intrinsically live within our guts to actually digest the fiber for us. And that has a large bearing on glycemic index, or basically your blood sugar management, whether or not you develop diabetes. The bacteria also play a role in cholesterol management. Your liver takes care of a lot of it, but certain types of bacteria can raise the bad cholesterol, or the LDL, and certain types can actually decrease the bad LDL, or the bad cholesterol rather. So essentially, the idea stuck with me around 2023. It had been a while since I had done kind of a literature review. I was like, I'm going to turn this into a company. And so I spent about a year doing research. And what I mean by that is in-human randomized control trials, kind of the highest bar of evidence within medical literature. Narrowed it down to 79 papers, which are widely available or publicly available whenever anybody asks. I send the shared Google Drive. It's kind of the select papers are under case studies on our website. But what I found
applied to 79. I just wanted to mention that.
I tried my best. My wife says I'm short story long and not long story short. Probably carries over into that as well. But 13 of those randomized control trials actually showed that certain probiotics and postbiotics actually lower your LDL by 15 to 21%, depending on which of those 13 you're looking at. That's on par with some of the anti-lipemic agents that I prescribe in clinic. For people who know medications who are listening, that's on par with bempedoic acid and ezetimibe, kind of statin alternatives. And so the whole concept of this is to prevent someone from landing on my table at 3 a.m. if I can help it. It's not for everyone, and I couch it very much so in this is true and true, pun intended, a supplement to a healthy lifestyle. Again, no silver bullet to health, no free ride. You got to have incremental, healthier eating and incremental, increase in activity. And then you take this, as long as you're not extremely high risk, in which case this is not for you. You should be taking a pharmaceutical agent if you've had a heart attack before and you need intensive LDL lowering. But for the average person who's looking to prevent things down the road, prevent that 10 to 15 years of the end of life being shit, then this is for you. This will be an adjunct. And, to kind of, put my money where my mouth is, I tell people, get a lipid profile before you start it. And then if you take it every day for 3 months, get a lipid profile at the end. And as long as you don't start eating 3 cheeseburgers a day and, be glued to the couch, all of a sudden your LDL will go down by 15 to 21%.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's good. That's very good. So, and I'm glad you turned it into a venture. I mean, you've mentioned on your profile, listeners know that almost all of our guests come through Podmatch, and the Podmatch profile showed that supplements were not only a thing for you, but something apparently you got pushback on. Like, what are you doing pushing supplements? But you emphasized you have the science behind it. This is not just something that you're punching out there because Dr. Oz said to do it. You said this is. I looked into this. I looked at the 79 papers. I found the 13. I mean, that's the real thing.
I often will say I try to position myself as the anti-Dr. Oz. I cannot stand that. Yeah, it's a common misconception even among clinicians. We see the supplement space as like woo-woo science, or it's not real. It's pseudoscience. One of the statins, lovastatin, actually started as a supplement back in 79.
Really? Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Coenzyme Q, or CoQ10, which you guys may have heard of, was a supplement for the longest time, and then in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology, they did a randomized controlled trial, pitting that against placebo in patients with heart failure. Turns out it actually works in terms of relieving symptoms and improving heart failure. And so there's a signal of benefit. And if you look even, before there was a supplement industry, we've known about aspirin for, 1,000 years plus. People were chewing on a tree bark and they didn't know it was aspirin. They just knew it was taking their headache away. And now we use it to, prevent heart disease. There is not everything has to be pharmaceutical for it to be effective, as long as there's data behind it, is what I would say.
That's a healthy improvement. I like that one. We're running near the end of the allocated time, so we need to kind of wrap things up a little bit. But first things first, tell people how to find your product line.
Yeah, absolutely. So lylahealth.com, Lylah, health.com. There are blogs on there. I write about heart health education. It's me, myself, and I. It's not AI assisted or ghostwritten. And every claim I make is hyperlinked to the index study, so you can read it for yourself and verify and tell whether it's bullshit or not. All the studies that I've talked about are available under case studies. And then I also make TikTok videos and Instagram videos at Dr. Bilal Ahmed 4, because there are apparently 3 other Dr. Bilal Ahmeds on TikTok. But
is that right? Okay. Mm-hmm.
So if you want to hear about heart health and just musings about how the healthcare system is broken, feel free to take a look.
I like that last bit. That's cool. I'm an anarchist in that sense. What do you want?
Yeah. A little bit of fatalism never hurt anybody.
Yeah. All right. Second thing we like to do now, Amory is not only a co-host, she's also at one point a listener, and still is a listener. And as a result, she brings the listener's perspective. So I always ask her to kind of tie everything together, because I want to know how she's been thinking about it. And she got pretty excited. You got pretty excited a couple of times there, Amory. So I know you were really paying attention. What's grabbing your attention the most out of this particular conversation today?
I mean, I just love learning about the human body and how I think on this one, it's just shown me how connected it all is, you know, and how your gut health, how that can actually affect your heart and how it affects, you know, the plaque in it and just how it can improve your health. And I just thought there was so much good stuff in there. I think Dr. Ahmed is a brilliant example of a doctor who's rooting for his clients. For me personally, having that person-centered approach and wanting to make that difference here so that you can improve 20 years in here is actually quite rare. It's not something I've come across much. So thank you for that. And it made me think a lot about my own personal journey sort of with my health, because I've put a lot of weight on through menopause. And I think that's through being disconnected to my body. And I just agree that making those small changes that you said, you know, just being sedentary, that, you know, that's how I got, and that's how I think I piled a lot of the weight on. But now it's just, I was doing like the infinity hoop. I was doing like a hoop around my waist while I was cooking dinner and watching telly. There's stuff you can do, make little changes, because I just realized that I'd been on my bottom all day in meetings and I hadn't moved. So there are things you can do. So, and I just love the whole prevention of health issues while you are healthy, not waiting until you're having to go to the doctor, you're needing that medication. Make those little changes now. And also the bit about being heard by your doctor. And I think it's really important to ask those questions. Why are you doing that? And I just love your whole approach. I wish you were a GP over here. I'll be there talking to you. So thank you.
Should be the bare minimum of the job, but I appreciate it.
You can see why I asked her for this, right? Because I mean,
I can. That was beautiful. Yeah, that's a very nice, succinct summary.
It's pretty obvious, yeah. There is a third thing that I like to do at the end of every episode, and this is how I like to conclude it. Because you mentioned, I mean, you're doing TikTok, for goodness sake. Not many doctors do TikTok. I give you credit for doing TikTok. We're actually going to start doing some more TikTok here in the next couple of weeks, including with the new podcast as well. But what you're really saying is you're doing what you can to reach out and help people beyond your career path. And I love that anyway. I love the fact that you're trying to help people, and that's really pretty much describes everybody who comes onto the program. Everybody who comes on here is more net giver than net taker, and you're demonstrating that. The 21st century has made that possible in a way that wasn't possible 30, 40, 50 years ago. I remember I was there. It just wasn't there. It wasn't part of it. It is possible now. But there's also a piece that I noticed, which is, you don't get a lot of credit for that. You get lies. You don't get a whole lot of people saying, wow, thank you for actually doing what you're doing here. And you end up touching people's lives. We do too. I mean, everybody who does this kind of stuff, we end up touching people's lives in ways we don't even know about. Yeah. And we don't get credit for that. So I figure, well, I'm a podcast host, I can give some credit. So I'm going to do that. So Bilal, Dr. Ahmed, on behalf of those people you've never met, and never seen, and never will meet, and never will see, who you've been helping just by trying to reach out and share what you know and be who you are, and help them to hear things that they never would have heard otherwise. On their behalf, thank you for what you're doing, because you are making a difference in this world.
That is extremely nice. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you as well.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah,
thank you everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.